So I've been looking up stuff on abuse and childhood trauma lately because remember how I mentioned in that autism video how I look stuff up all the time about mental illnesses I have? Well, I have developmental PTSD because I was looking up stuff on PTSD and I was mostly getting stuff on soldiers and warriors and veterans, sorry, not warriors, and veterans and things in war and things like this. But not much else on other types of PTSD from other types of trauma. So I end up just trying to be more specific on that. And whenever they're talking about it, they always show the same fucking type of abusive family. You got your abusive asshole, most likely alcoholic father, and then you got your, mother who's being abused all the time and is most likely neglectful because she's, or possibly neglectful. They're both neglectful in their own way or something. And then, we're talking about how the effects on the child and all this other stuff. And when they talk about sexual abuse, it's almost always a male perpetrator of it. They have, like they show, like it's the stepdad or maybe the father, or the creepy uncle or the grandfather or the neighbor or whatever else. And then they talk about how the effects on the children, how they become later on in life, and how it's always the daughter is more likely to end up being a victim of domestic abuse later on in life, and the son is more likely to become an abuser himself, and then that's like it. That's all they're showing or talking about. And that's sort of portrayal, of, like that's the archetype and that's what happens, and that's it. There you go. That's abuse. Fucking pisses me off. Because it way oversimplifies things. And first of all, a woman who grew up in an abusive home can grow up to be abusive, and a man who grew up in an abusive home can grow up to be an abuse victim. It is more likely to happen the way, that typical thing is, just because of, the way culture treats masculinity and strength and femininity being like weak or whatever, so like people feel like they have to act a certain way because of their gender, so which can feed into that if they have that. But the thing is that's when you're talking about that's mostly talking about physical abuse. When it comes to emotional abuse or sexual abuse, women are just as likely to end up, after experiencing the shitty upbringing and the abuse and everything else from growing up, to be the perpetrators of it later on, because that's what they think is normal. Like, my mom, extremely emotionally abusive my whole life, and she was even sexually abusive towards my siblings and I. And why was she like that? Because her mother was like that. Her father was mostly absent, so was mine, but mine was because my parents were divorced. Hers was just because her dad was in the military. But yeah, so it's not, and my family's not an exclusive case. It just, they grow up thinking that shit's normal, and then they have kids of their own, and then they think that's how you're supposed to parent, and that's how they parent their kids. That's just how the cycle of abuse happens, is that they think they get so detached from being the scared little kid that they just become the asshole parent. Whereas some people break the chain where they're like, I remember how awful it was to be experiencing that, and like they'll see how a good parent can be, and they're like, I want to be like that parent, I don't want to be like my parent. But it doesn't always. And some people become afraid of hurting others when they grow up in that sort of situation. Like me, I'm always terrified that something I've done is hurting someone in some way, shape, or form, or just making them uncomfortable or whatever, and I'm constantly, oh, I'm sorry, did I say something? Oh, well, fuck it. I hate social situations because it's so stressful, because I'm always worried that I'm doing or saying the wrong thing, or I might be hurting someone or whatever else, but also just like they're judging me, like that sort of anxiety. But anyways, and then also like the physical abuse, like showing it only coming from the father, even though anyone can be physically abusive. The mother can be physically abusive, a sibling can be physically abusive, and that's something that a sibling can also be emotionally abusive or even sexually abusive, but that's something that just like nobody fucking talks about, you never fucking see, because it's supposed to be like the kids are in there together getting abused by their awful parents, but they don't talk about how the abuse that maybe the older sibling or whatever is experiencing from the parents is translating already into continuing the cycle already with their own siblings. So, because like me, I experienced physical abuse, I experienced sexual abuse, I experienced emotional abuse growing up. But the physical abuse came from my older brother. Except everyone was like, oh, it's just kids fighting, sibling rivalry, even though it was really one-sided because my brother was substantially stronger and larger than me. And he was doing shit that wasn't just fighting. It was like choking me, sitting on me and choking me to the point of passing out multiple times. Like, this is something that happened regularly for like 2 years. Constantly pushing me down the stairs. Not just like getting into a fight with me, but just like, I'm angry, I'm gonna shove you down the stairs. Or, like grabbing the backs of my shirt and like ramming me into the door like a battering ram or things like this. That's not fucking just getting into a physical fight with your sibling. That's someone who is angry with the way that, because the thing that was causing it is he was so frustrated with how he was being treated by my mom, but he couldn't do anything because he talked back even, like, let alone fucking express his anger in a physical way towards her. He would have hell to pay. So he would take out that anger that he didn't know what to deal with, and the fact that, like, media is always like, oh, if you're angry, like, you're a man, you're supposed to be all physical and strong and beat people up and shit. So he did it to the only people that he could overpower, being his younger siblings and our pets. However, I always tried to be the one who got it because I really didn't want my sister, who was 4.5 years younger than me, so obviously a lot smaller and weaker, to receive that sort of thing, and also pets, substantially smaller and weaker because they're fucking little animals. And whatnot. And honestly, like, the physical abuse stopped when somebody actually realized, who actually was like, you know what, I really think there's something else going on here, and actually sat down and talked to him and asked why he did it, and then just, like, validated his feelings, and then it just fucking completely stopped. Like, not like teetered out, like fucking stopped straight up. Because he just needed someone to give him a way to express his anger in a constructive and not destructive manner. And also another thing, talking about, like, the types of abuse that they show, is also when they talk about sexual abuse, not just, like, who perpetrates it, but how it's perpetrated is like, is the sort of only talking about genitalia. Even though sexual abuse can be showing a child pornography, or asking the child to touch them at the adult anywhere, or, things like, if, like, having the child sleep up against your naked body, like the parent's naked body, or the perpetrator's naked body, or fondling the behind, which people don't seem to think, because everyone's like, oh, butts are nothing, but, like, if you're, like, reaching your hand down a kid's pants and, like, grabbing and fondling that shit, that's sexual abuse. That's inappropriate touching. And the kid can't do shit about it because they think, oh, wait, I'm not, but they're acting like this is really normal, but I'm really uncomfortable, and I don't know what to do, and I am afraid of this person anyways because of other abuse that this person is likely perpetrating, so I'm not going to do anything, I'm just going to deal with it. Which is what my experience was growing up. The latter two, not the pornography thing. And then that sort of thing teaches you a really fucked up way of looking at sexual situations and relationships, because if you end up in a sexual situation you're not comfortable with, you're so used to being in that, like, oh, my feelings towards a situation are, and also, like, if ever you did voice it, it's like, no, it's fine, it's not, we're just doing family thing, it's cool. Anyways, so you always feel like, okay, so I can't trust the way I feel towards a sexual situation, I have to trust the other person. So you might end up in a lot more situations where you end up being sexually assaulted or even raped, which was also my experience on both counts. So, because you're just like, I'm not comfortable, this person isn't asking how I'm feeling, so I'm assuming I should just, I don't know what to do. And then you just kind of freeze up, and then the person just keeps on going because they're not really, because they're still rapists, because they're not asking or checking in with you or anything like that. They're not making sure they have consent before doing shit, they're just doing it. And since you're not, like, doing or saying anything because you're just freezing and not sure what the fuck to do because you've been taught just to, you can't trust things that, and blah blah blah. Also, there was alcohol involved on most of those times, including the rape. But yeah, so, yeah, like, it really, and they don't talk about how sexual abuse affects you in that way. It's like, fucking hell, when you look up stuff on re-victimization, it's all like, oh, they're looking for stuff that's familiar and normal, which is the case for some people, but they feel like they deserve it or something. But sometimes it's just even more primal than that, in that they think it's just fucking normal and they haven't experienced anything else, so when that stuff's happening, they don't see anything wrong with it. So they end up being easy victims, because they don't, when that stuff starts happening, someone who hasn't experienced that stuff's like, yo, what the fuck, to this situation. They're just like, okay, this is the way it's supposed to be, and I'll just go along with it, I guess, because that's all I've ever known. So they don't know that something's wrong. Even though it's still affecting them, as if they did, just because when something bad happens to you, regardless of whether or not you know at the time that is bad, it's still traumatic and happening to you. So, and it takes so long to unlearn this shit that you end up getting programmed, and just people don't fully. It pisses me off, because it completely erases so many experiences, and it can get someone, because I didn't realize really that I was experiencing this kind of abuse until past 20. So, like, I didn't even realize that my experiences were abuse, because it was just so normalized, and I never saw any examples of it anywhere. So I just was like, they're treating it like it's the most normal thing, and no one else is treating it like it's bad, because I'm just not seeing it anywhere. So my only point of reference as to what this is from people saying it's totally fine, until I actually, opened up to a counselor about it after months and months, and he was like, okay, I'm sorry, you're exhibiting all the symptoms of someone who experienced physical, sexual, and emotional abuse for most if not all of their lives. And then he started going through, like, did, this person do that? And I'm like, well, my mom. I was like, well, and then when I was 6, then I told him the things that were happening, all the while apologizing for their behavior with the same apologies I'd been fed my whole life. And he's like, no, you don't have to apologize with them. Just tell me what happened. And so I told him what happened, and then I was like, yeah, hon, that's major sexual, physical, and emotional abuse. Yeah, it fucking makes sense that you're all fucked up from it. So, obviously not like that at all. Like, I'm just paraphrasing and simplifying what he said. But yeah, and that's when it was kind of like, it hit me like, fuck, I thought I was like, and it's awful, because then when you have that PTSD from experiencing those traumas growing up, but you don't know that you experienced those traumas, even though, like, not in the my mind just repressed it kind of way, in that I didn't know that those were traumas, because I feel like they shouldn't be traumas, because nobody's acting like they're bad. You end up, like, almost wanting bad stuff to happen to you, because then it might justify the way you're feeling, so that you can actually talk about how you're feeling to someone, because it makes sense to someone else, and there's a reason behind it. So, yeah, that can be another way that someone ends up being re-victimized, is that they're just looking for justification for their already justified feelings. So, but also even just in general, it's really sad for people to be feeling that they want bad things to happen to them, so that they can talk about how the bad things that have already happened to them have made them feel. So that's another way that just, it's awful that they're not showing any sort of representation of any other abuse type other than the one that everyone's already very familiar with. So, yeah, and even in domestic abuse, a woman can be physically abusive towards a man and everything. Hi, Bear. But yeah, I should have ended on that note. I'm sorry. But yeah, like, you end up with people stuck in these, and even, well, actually, no, on that note, you end up with these guys whose girlfriend, wife, fiance, whatever, is extremely abusive emotionally, physically, or even sexually, and they don't know, or they feel like they're not allowed to feel that way, because, they're a man and she's a woman, so, they have no point of reference of that, and so they can be experiencing the same sort of things. That may be the last thing I said with the, wanting to experience bad things happening to you, but so that's just a way that you are, by talking about it, but only talking about the one type of it, you're perpetuating it still. So you're perpetuating the abuse and allowing it to happen more and continuing with it. So we need more awareness to this stuff, sure, but stop showing the one thing that everyone's already aware of. Thanks for watching.